Even though the holidays are over, Santa Iwata returned once more to drop off one final gift, our first look at the next generation of Pokemon games known as Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. And though our glimpse of the game was brief, there's a lot of information hiding in there, which is why we're sending it through a rigorous analysis process. But to do so, we've enlisted the help of our resident Pokemon master, Derek Bittner, who uncovered many of these details. So let's get started. The trailer begins with a quick introduction from none other than Pikachu himself. Now don't worry, Pikachu's not actually Godzilla-sized. Instead, when the camera zooms out, we can see he's just standing atop what appears to be the Eiffel Tower. And this probably isn't just for show, instead it suggests that the game takes place in a region inspired by Europe, if not France specifically. In fact, one of the gameplay scenes appears to show off the game's take on that very same landmark in the background, and even the surrounding buildings have a strong European flair to them. It makes sense considering the first several Pokemon games took place in regions inspired by Japan, with the in-game map even bearing a similar geographical layout. Then Black and White switched things up with a region clearly inspired by New York. So it seems like a European-inspired region would be a logical place for the series to go next. In fact, the gameplay footage shows off a lot of logical improvements for the franchise. Take for instance the fact that both the world and characters are now fully three-dimensional. And though the camera still appears to be automated, the new graphics engine allows it for it to be even more dynamic than what we saw in Black and White. And these improvements extend even to the battles, which finally features 3D Pokemon instead of just sprites, as well as a camera that can actually move around to capture all of the dramatic action. And it's perhaps these battles that best showcase the game's eye-catching use of toon shading, with the simplified lighting effects and character outlines that almost make it seem as if you're playing an episode of the Pokemon TV show. But beyond the visuals, we can see that the battles remain true to the series' roots. Of course, it's still turn-based, and we can see from the Pokeball icons in the corner that parties still consist of 6 Pokemon at max. Of course, the star of the attraction are the Pokemon themselves, and the trailer shows off 18 of them, 5 brand new ones and 13 returning. Among the new ones are what are presumably the 3 starter Pokemon, Chespin, Fennekin, and Froakie, representing Grass, Fire, and Water respectively. We're pretty sure these are the 3 Pokemon you'll be choosing from at the start of your adventure, as their types are the exact same as the starters in every previous game. Plus Nintendo always shows off the starters first. Beyond the starting Pokemon, the trailer also shows off the 2 legendary Pokemon that will represent the series, with each one actually bearing resemblance to its respective title. Notice how the flying one looks like a Y, while the deer-like one looks at least like the top half of the X. Now if this series is anything like past ones, then that means there will likely be a 3rd prominent legendary Pokemon as well, which will likely go on to be the cover Pokemon for the inevitable 3rd game. You know where I'm going with this, Pokemon Z. And yes, the Pokemon will probably resemble that letter as well. So maybe it'll be a dragon or a sea serpent or something. But why Z? Well, besides the obvious fact that it comes after X and Y, those 3 letters also represent the 3 axes in the 3D environment, X, Y, and Z. And being as this is the first fully 3D Pokemon game, as well as the first to appear on a system with a 3D screen, well it almost makes too much sense. Now getting back to the Pokemon themselves, the trailer also confirms at least 11 of the returning ones, some of which are on screen for just a split second. And they are Magikarp, Golurk, Munchlax, Kirlia, Pansear, Patrat, Pikachu, Litwick, Psyduck, Weevil, Audino, Mienfoo, and Dratini. Now the interesting thing is that every prior generation of Pokemon, that is 1 through 5, is represented here, except for the second one. However, because Pikachu and Weevil are both present, that basically confirms that the 2nd generation of Pokemon must be here too, as both of them feature evolutions from those games. And besides, the Pokemon Company president recently confirmed the game would have around 700 Pokemon total, which means even accounting for the new ones, we'll likely be seeing most classic Pokemon returning as well. Now something else to note is that the models used for the Pokemon appear to be entirely new, as in they're not simply reused from previous games where they also appeared in polygonal form, like the recent Pokédex 3D. Just take a look at Pikachu here and see how he differs compared to his Pokédex 3D model. Now of course, no Pokemon game would be complete without a Pokemon trainer, as that's sort of the main character, and the trailer confirms that you'll again have the choice of either a boy or girl one. And interestingly, the girl's outfit appears to be almost identical to that of the Pokemon Ranger trainer class from the Black and White games. But there's something about those outfits that might be even more interesting. Early on in the footage, there's a scene where the boy trainer is looking at himself in the mirror, which seems a little out of place, unless you consider that mirrors such as this one might be where you go to customize your outfit. I mean, how else can you explain those sunglasses? But speaking of those glasses, you can actually see him wearing them in every scene of the trailer, except in this clip. Where did they go? It further supports the idea that they're an optional accessory and perhaps just one of many. And being able to customize your character would also dovetail nicely with recent comments from the Pokemon Company president, in which he said they were trying to make it feel as if you're playing the game with others in real time by using an innovative communication system. Who knows what exactly that means, but assuming this involves your character appearing in other people's games, surely you'd want him or her to stand out in some way, and customizing their appearance might be just the ticket. Beyond the trainer's appearance itself, it looks like you'll be exploring the world in much the same way as before, traversing various routes and battling trainers along the way, who you can see standing around in several of the scenes. Now in this particular clip, we can see how the new visuals actually enhance the sense of immersion. Notice how the lower camera now enables you to see a town in the far distance. And if you look close, you can see that Pokemon centers are back too. And of course, the tall grass where you encounter random Pokemon returns as well. Though this time you'll actually see the Pokemon emerge from between the blades before a battle, which is a nice touch. Another neat touch is that route numbers are actually marked on signposts in the world itself, without having to go up and read them. But that signpost is interesting for another reason too, as it marks the return of Route 3. Let me explain. For the most part, route names have never been reused between Pokemon games. For example, the first generation of Pokemon games had routes 1 through 28, while Generation 2 had 29 through 48, and so on and so forth. And this was likely due to the fact that the earlier games all took place in similar regions, which as we pointed out before were all based on Japan. But that all changed with Generation 5, which basically hit the reset button on route names and also featured the routes 1 through 23. And that's likely because those games took place in a faraway region, which as you might recall was based on New York. And since Route 3 appears here for the third time, that likely just lends further credence to the idea that this game too takes place in a distant land compared to the past ones. Okay, that's enough about Route 3, now let's take a look at some of the other areas you'll be visiting. First up is a brief look at a forest which features some really nice lighting effects. It also appears you'll have an ally for this section. Perhaps you have to escort her through the forest? Or maybe you have to help her capture just the right picture, as she is carrying a camera after all. Another scene shows off a canyon with some strange buildings, but we really have no idea what they might be. Perhaps a research center of some kind? Then there are these 4 clips which we think might offer a glimpse into some of the new gyms. The first one here looks like it might be the grass type gym, where you'll swing from platform to platform using the ropes. Now the second clip is definitely from a gym based on the central pillars which are similar to past games. And we think this one is for Psychic type Pokemon. Oh, and did you notice the 2 paths that extend to the north and to the east before the building reforms? Maybe this one features a maze-like layout that's constantly changing. As for the dude standing there, we think he's the new gym guide, though he is quite a bit younger than past games. For the third clip, we think the spiderweb-like structure might mean this is a bug type gym. And did you notice how the bubbles seem to fly off the web upon landing on it? Maybe that's part of solving this gym's puzzles. And last up we see what might be the fire type gym, but we're really only guessing with this one. Alright, we're just about done here, but as usual there's still just a couple of final things I want to point out. First up, watch the main character closely in this scene. He's not running, he's skating. And if you turn up the volume, you can even hear the sound of the skates if you listen closely. We can only guess that this might replace a bicycle from past games and serve as a faster way to get around. Finally, we noticed that the Japanese logos for both Pokemon X and Pokemon Y are a little different from the American ones, and not just because of the non-English characters. If you look close, each one has what appears to be a rainbow-colored DNA symbol near the middle. Perhaps that offers a hint as to the game's storyline, perhaps dealing with genetic engineering. If so, that might actually give new meaning to the titles Pokemon X and Pokemon Y, because, as you might recall from biology class, X and Y are also the chromosomes that determine sex. Yep, there just might be more, much more to these games' titles than appears at first glance. And with that, we're done covering everything we could dig up on Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. As usual, let us know if we missed anything by posting in the comments. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain.com for more on Pokemon and other things gaming too.